My name is Bill Bassuk. I'm the founder of the College of Biomedical Equipment Technology. It's an online biomedical school.
One question I had with the other two gentlemen, I was reading through some of the comments on this. One person who sent a pump in to get repaired with the manufacturer, they destroyed the pump, they cut it up to bits and pieces, and then they sent it back to him. So they quoted him, they said, you can send this for repair. They had the serial, all the information, and they sent it back to him destroyed. And some of the comments that were showing up on that, I just kind of wanted to get your reaction to.
Okay.
So you have a public video of a biomed tech trying to put an end-of-life medical device back into service. Right to repair is important, but not at the cost of patient safety. You're protecting the profits of the hospital over the safety of a patient. You're a bootlicker. Good job making sure that money goes right to the C-suite at the hospital. These are the comments that were rising to the top in terms of criticizing. They were saying they're right for cutting up that pump and destroying it.
Okay.
What's your reaction to that?
My reaction is this. They might have thought they were right. However, they did not have the right to destroy property that did not belong to them. What they should have done was send a letter back to whoever sent them that pump and say, just so you know, this device here can be a patient safety hazard that can cause harm. We recommend that you take it out of service and don't use it again. They did not have the right to cut the wires or whatever they did. Can you imagine if you brought your car into shop and all of a sudden it comes back and someone decided to take it to a junkyard and squash it because it said your car didn't pass the safety inspection for this year and it was a driving hazard because you had some problems with it. Nobody has the right to damage other people's equipment. They should have communicated effectively and said, here's what our recommendations are, and it's your responsibility to do what you think is right now. That's the way that it should have been handled.
I agree 100%. Yeah, some of the comments on that were very, very interesting.
And I think some of the reasons they comment that is they don't have all the information in front of them. And it's easy to take the side of patient safety, which I always err on the side of patient safety. If you walk into my shops, you'll see a big sign, patient safety is everything. And that's why we're DNV certified. That makes sure that we're in compliance. Every device we work on is 100% in compliance with the DNV standards, the Joint Commission standards, which falls under CMS, and that's regulated by the government. So there's no reason to go against the right to repair. Everybody should have the right to repair if it's done properly.
Yeah, because a lot of the people that were criticizing this are making it sound like you don't care about patient safety. You care about, well, if I could save $50 here, let's do it.
Absolutely not. That is not true. There are so many times where I would say this needs to come out of service for whatever reason and make sure it stays out until it's either 100% repaired correctly. And just so you know, I want everyone to know this. Whenever we have a patient that was supposedly harmed by a medical device or could have been harmed, we deactivate that device, we send it to the original equipment manufacturer and have them do an evaluation on it to tell us if it was operator error, if the device itself malfunctioned, and when I say or technical area based on us. And then we get those reports back. And 95% of the time, it's usually operator error where something wasn't performed correctly. They have a lot of PRN nurses or staff that are not trained proficiently on something and might have made a mistake. And there are times where it is the medical device's fault, and there are very few times where it is the technician's fault, whether it's the OEM or the ISO. So we are human, mistakes do happen, but that's why we have our processes in place to reduce that.
Yeah, Justin was saying that they both got a laugh when they heard that patients are dying because patients are dying because of user error and malpractice, not because a device was fixed improperly.
Right. Yeah, and there's we're not going to call anyone out, but there's many case studies that we have, and I use them for education purposes. I'm not going to do it over the airwaves.
Yeah. So somebody said you are choosing to save a hospital a few $100s over replacing a device that has the potential to kill someone if it malfunctions. If it's at the end of life, replace it. Medical devices are not phones or tractors. They're not meant to be used and repaired until they are dust. Riding them until failure is how people die.
This might be the same person that wrote the other one.
Yeah.
No, we're not choosing to do that. If there's a medical device that's end of life, and let me explain what end of life means to an original equipment manufacturer. End of life means that they no longer want to support it, and they're not going to make any more parts for it, and therefore they want to sell a new medical device, okay? And hospitals, a lot of them don't have that much money, especially in the rural areas. What we're challenged to do with now is find out if we can make sure we get certified parts from other manufacturers who stockpile some of them, from the older equipment. So when a device goes deactivated, there's still good parts in it. We take out the good parts, certify them, recertify them, and then we're able to reuse them to keep that medical device alive longer. We never do it on the case of patient safety. If it passes the calibration checks and the preventive maintenance checks, it'll go back in use, and it's not end of life until we say it's end of life. But everything we do is so heavily regulated. We're doing it the right way, and it's endorsed by the DNV, the Joint Commission. They see the way we do our work, and they sign off on it. They know.
What is the Joint Commission? Just because, since I don't know a lot of the terminology, and some of my audience may not.
The Joint Commission is an accreditation organization that's not for profit. The DNV is the same thing. It's an accreditation organization that's for profit. Both of them use different strategies on inspections. The DNV is a risk-based inspection agency. They go off of the physical environment and the patient safety. And the Joint Commission goes off of patient tracers from when the patient went in, and then patient safety as well. They use EC standards, where environmental control, and DNV uses SR, which is service requirements, to have the proper procedure set up. I hope that explains it better to people. We're not trying to save a buck for the hospital. If anything, we'll always tell the hospital, you need to spend a little bit of money here to reduce your liability on that.
James says it's kind of ridiculous that a bolt costs $50 for an IV pull because it's got to be certified. Can't go to Lowe's and get a 50-cent one. At least that is what a Biomed told me.
Okay. There's things, let's use extension cords, all right? In the hospitals, you can't just use any extension cord. They're called RFPs. They have to be attached to a medical device where you have to be able to take it off with a tool, and then you have to be medical grade. And pretty much what medical grade means that it's been certified, that you can use it up to 75% of its maximum output, whatever the amperage is that they have on it. So, yes, I agree with you. It's frustrating that you can't go to Lowe's or Home Depot, but let's say we did go to Lowe's and Home Depot. Now you have a patient safety violation because that device was not certified. So we get the certified medical grade one. Yes, it costs more. So you can't have it both ways. You have to do it the right way. My name is Bill Bassuk. I'm the founder of the College of Biomedical Equipment Technology. It's an online biomedical school, and a lot of people thought back when I created it that it would not work. But from the time that it's of its inception to where we are now, we're the largest biomed school in the country, and we have a certificate program, an associate's degree program, and we're about to launch an IT program that complements the biomed side of it. And to add to that, we're very proud to be adding virtual reality, which will be the hands-on portion now. So people can't say you can't learn anymore if it's just online and not hands-on. We will have all that through the VR. The way the program works is once you complete your program, you go to a hospital that we assign you to and help you get set up, or an independent service organization, and through our partnerships we have throughout the country, they provide the hands-on training for you based on the information that we give them where you need to be trained. We've got about a 90% job placement ratio now, and we have about a 90% people who pass the course. And there's always that variance of 10% of life happens. But yeah, that's the background that you have is excellent on that.
Yesterday we were talking about all the comments that I was reading in that thread, and I went over all those comments with everybody else here, but you seem to be the most passionate about it when you were talking about the real cause of actual patient deaths. Would you mind reiterating a little bit what we were talking about yesterday?
When you say the actual real cause of patient deaths?
Well, yeah, the people in all these threads were talking about how, an improperly repaired device will kill somebody and all this nonsense.
Yeah, first of all, I'm going to back up a little bit. You have to understand SMDA, which is the Safe Medicals Device Act of 1990 that the government initiated. And pretty much we're all aware of that, and we know how to work on the equipment. The way that, there's some acronyms I'm going to throw out, but I'll give you the definitions. You have ISO, which is Independent Service Organizations, and OEM, which is the original equipment manufacturer. And the original equipment manufacturer does not want third-party companies working on their devices. So what they try to say in the medical field is that for life safety, it should only be the OEM. And based on the way we have our quality set up and the criteria of our processes, as long as we do the PMs to the manufacturer's standards, there's no difference as who works on it as long as they're trained properly. The way most of these people become trained is I'll use myself as an example. I worked for an OEM on hematology equipment. When I quit that company, I was certified to teach other people based on my training and education. So I taught other people how to work on the medical devices, and this enabled hospitals to take them off contract and do them in-house. It works the same way. The OEMs do not like that because it takes revenues away from them, and they inflate their prices anyways on the service side if they don't have any competition. So the right to repair enables all of us to work on whether it's medical devices, cars, phones, and one of the biggest arguments I would propose is if you bought a car and someone told you couldn't work on your brakes or something, and that's not allowed, it's your car, you should be able to do that. Well, that's what's happening in the medical field, but they're trying to use, when I say they, the OEM, is trying to use life safety in regards to saying there's more jeopardy when an independent service organization works on medical equipment than them, but there's no data to prove that. In reality, there's probably more data to prove that actual harm that was caused by equipment, I'm not saying the engineers, equipment, was still under the contracts when the OEMs had them. So they can't really support that evidence, they just state that. And the rhetoric that they have is biased on their side. So I'm an advocate for the right to repair. And as long as you're trained properly and you're signed off by the correct people, there's no reason you should not be allowed to work on that equipment. I hope that answers that.
Yeah, amazingly. Thank you. So tell me more about your school.
All right. Well,
there are like 3 questions you're saying, I want to do this as a job, I'm interested in this, how do I get into this?
All right. It's real simple. You just go under CBET, CBET.edu, and everything is right there on the website. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter if you don't have any money. We're one of the only schools that does 0% financing at 100% minus the deposit, which I believe is like $750, and your payments are like $100 after that, $100 to $150 while you're going to school. You will get a job if you do everything you're supposed to in our program. We'll pretty much guarantee you a job. We're not allowed to guarantee you because of accreditation standards, but everyone that's graduated our school that wanted a job has received a job. Our industry is in a huge demand. There's a huge shortage because we did a poor job recruiting in our industry. So right now we have all of us old people who are getting ready to retire, but no one to take our places. So we're at critical shortage right now. And the more people we can get trained up, the better.
Yeah, Justin was throwing out some numbers earlier, and my apologies if I got them wrong. Anybody who can rewind can correct me. He was saying something along the lines of like 15 to 20,000 hospitals in the country and about 9 or 10,000 people in this industry. So you have less than one per biomed for every hospital in the country.
No, those numbers are not correct. We probably have close to about 35 to 50,000 biomeds across the country altogether. And we're probably missing some numbers too because I don't know we're not including OEMs. That's probably just biomeds. So there's a huge gap. And right now what's happening is in the past when you learned biomedical, you came in with a toolbox and you had a hammer, screwdriver. Hopefully you didn't use a hammer too much, but you'd have more of the conventional style tools. As this equipment is more sophisticated, you have to know how to program, network, and integrate all this equipment. So it's leaning towards IT. So you have to learn IT as much as you do the troubleshooting on the mechanisms.
You're talking about how, like your generation did not get enough people involved and excited about this so that there'd be somebody to pass the torch on to. How did you get into this?
Ironically enough, I knew nothing about this industry and wanted to join the military back in the day. And my father was the one who said, go into Biomed. And I said, what's that? I didn't even know back then. And then when I found out about it, I enjoyed it because you never have the same day at work every day. It changes. There's thousands of different pieces of medical devices. As long as you become proficient on 25 to 30, it doesn't matter what manufacturer. There's always resources to learn how to repair that. But we're trying to get the word out by doing this right here, the YouTube channel, the trade shows. We're going to high schools and middle schools. Chase wrote a children's book to get to even the younger children to understand what Biomed is about. So hopefully, just by more exposure, more people will be aware of this industry and have an interest to get into it. It's a very fun industry. It's very technical. It's very challenging, but it's rewarding too because you're making a difference. You're helping the doctor in the background by making sure the medical devices are 100% safe to work on and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, like there's this kind of happiness when it's not just, I'm just fixing a board and it works again. When you get to see somebody like hugging the receptionist at the front of the store because they say, you got my wedding photos back. I thought that those were gone. I should have backed those up. I was 15 years old, and thank you. Like when you get to see that, when you know that somebody is healthy, or when you know that the surgery went properly because of your work, or that somebody did not have their medical procedure delayed because they had to wait 2 or 6 weeks for the manufacturer tech to come out and be able to actually fix something.
Yeah, no, that's true. There is a story I'd like to share with you on that. I have a friend. He'll be here at this show. He was working on anesthesia equipment. He was tired, but he decided, he didn't take any shortcuts. This is critical equipment. This is the stuff that when they put you to sleep when you go for an operation, that's the anesthesia devices that they use. And he just worked it the right way and did the procedure the way it was supposed to be done. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, his daughter had emergency surgery, and that was the device that they used to put her to sleep. And he knew that device was going to work fine because he did it, and he attested. He said, I backed this up with my kids' work, having to go under on it. So
I think that's what's so offensive when you read these comments saying that these people are they're just trying to save money here and there. They're just trying to make a quick buck off of screwing somebody. And the stories that you hear where somebody fixes a device that then gets used on their own family. Like there's a level of pride here in the work that we do that kind of crosses industries. Like, when I'm running a jumper wire under a BGH ship, even though it's for a device, and this is separate from your industry altogether, even though I'm working on a device that I don't even like, I want the work that I do to be something that I'm proud of 10 or 20 years later.
Absolutely.
For somebody to know that they went here, this is fixed right. If somebody looks at that under a microscope 40 years later, I want them to notice that this jumper wire was ran properly.
Mm-hmm.
There's a sense of pride in the work that repair techs like on this level do that I don't think is understood outside of the industry.
No, I agree with you.
So somebody said, you may have answered this, what sort of cost education-wise are you looking at?
Cost education-wise?
Yeah, so you're talking.
Okay, for the associate's degree, it's about $23,000 to $25,000 on the high end. All right, it just depends on what the lab fees are, what classes you're taking, and then on the certificate program, it's about a little less than half of that. The good news is this: when we had people graduate our class from the 6 to 7 month certificate, they got jobs starting at $50,000, and the ones with the associate had jobs starting. Probably from 60 to 65, not all of them. The mean is about 45 to 50 now, which jumped up a lot, but that's not bad for a 7-month investment in education on a return on your money. So if you take education and the cost and compare it to a traditional 4-year school, you're saving at least $75,000.
Let's see.
And you don't have to live in a dorm either.
How much of the software in biomedical equipment is essential, and how much of it is there to make it more difficult to service and repair or maintain a device, or to generate more profit?
Well, that's a very good question, by the way, because it varies from medical device to medical device. Most of the software that we already have the passcodes, because when we purchase it, we get that. The problem is that the OEMs want to sell their equipment as much as they can. That's how they make their money. So they set it up where they almost force you to buy the new software upgrade within 5 years. But what we're trying to do to offset that is on the upfront negotiations of the purchase, we usually say any upgrades of software is going to be included with this device as long as this device is active in the hospital. So there are ways to go around the OEM, and it's all upfront on the sale. So if you don't do your negotiations correctly, that's when the right to repair can be a problem for a hospital.
Yes. If I have my associate's AAS, or in computer electronics engineering technology, what would it take to get into this field?
You could probably go through our 6-month class that we have just to get your certificate, because you already have your degree on that. And that's all you need. Once we educate you on that, you'll be ready to go and ready to work in a hospital or an independent service organization. And believe it or not, even the equipment manufacturers hire people from our school.
An industry that will still exist in 10 years, can't say that about most anymore. Huh. Yeah.
Yeah, this industry's not going away. It's just changing. You have to become network savvy as well as troubleshooting savvy on both sides.
Do they lock down hospital hardware to only allow repairs when using the correct software?
No, they do not. It just depends on what equipment you're working on. I guess the more sophisticated equipment makes it more difficult to work on the medical devices, but the independent service organizations that have been around a while and have the subject matter expertise usually have workarounds on that, and they can still get in. They usually get the passcodes from the hospital operator.
Because one of the problems we have in our field is they'll make it so that you can replace a part, and even if you take an OEM part from another one of this device that you purchased new, every part inside the device has a serial number on it. So when you put the new part in, it won't work unless you use the manufacturer's software to pair it. And the manufacturer's
Right.
software is only made available to people the manufacturer wants to make it available
Right.
to.
Now, I'm not saying that doesn't happen because it's starting to happen more and more the more sophisticated we get with our computers. Again, all that can be negotiated upfront on the sale of the medical device, so there won't be any issues when it comes time to repair the equipment. And the best thing that we can do for our industry right now in the hospitals is to educate the hospital leadership teams that when you purchase this equipment, which is done on the capital committee, part of the negotiations should include the biomed department to say, this is what we need to service it to help keep the cost down when the warranty part is over. Or you negotiate an extended warranty, 2 to 3 year warranty, so you're not paying for the service.
How often are inexperienced negotiators involved in that process to where they wind up buying something where they didn't negotiate these terms, so they're stuck with insane service costs later on?
I can't put a percentage on it. Let's just say it's a lot. So it happens a lot, and that's why education is so important. The hospitals that I work with, I educate them ongoingly because you have turnover to deal with, so they have a new purchasing person. And what happens in hospitals, sometimes you'll get a director of one department who wants this gadget because the doctor wants it, and they end up purchasing it without giving us a heads up. So now they purchase the device, negotiate it nothing, and we're stuck with whatever the terms of the contract are.
So the OEMs, I imagine, are not exceptionally happy when they see you on the other side of the negotiating table at one of these meetings.
No, they are, because they want to make the sale. It depends what part of the OEM. It's usually the sales part when the OEM's there. And when they're there, they're open to whatever. They want to make sure they get the sale, they get paid commission on that, and they need to push their units. So the
But you're there to protect the hospitals.
I'm strictly there to protect the hospital's best interest. You know, I'm an advocate for all hospitals.
How do hospitals find you and know that you exist? Like, as a purchasing, if I'm a purchasing agent at a hospital and I'm clueless to all these items that I should be negotiating, like, how do you wind up meeting those people and telling them, by the way, you're throwing millions out the? Or is it just like kind of a door-to-door salesman approach where you'll show up and you'll say, by the way, you're probably throwing millions of dollars into a shredder? Like,
It's a little bit of both, and the reason why I say that is because the school now is 5 years old, and I've been really focused on growing the school. So the service company I have, I just let it idle for a while. It's still doing well. So now that the school's on autopilot and I got the good team there, we're going to go and start going back to the service side of it. The way I do it is I find out where the C-suite has their trade shows, what meetings they go to, and I present over there on budget. So we'll discuss finances. How can we reduce your finances? Not only do we teach them how to reduce their budget, we also teach them how they reduce their budget while increasing their quality. And people say, well, how can you do that? And it's by the DNV standards that we use. We're certified on that. That's one of the accrediting agencies for hospitals. They're up there with the Joint Commission, who both report to the CMS. So used on the ISO standards, we're able to take these processes, make the hospitals a lot more efficient, thus reducing their budget.
Dude, you sound incredibly competent.
I've been doing this for a long, long time.
This is like a high compliment. Like
Well, thank you.
Because I'm used to dealing with, in my industry, you'll hear the industry lobbyists speak that are leading off of a script and then going, they don't even believe what they're saying. And then you hear the repair technicians show up and just like wipe the floor with them. I get that same feeling from you. You've been in this for a very long time. You know what you're talking about, and you really.
Well, I've seen it on both. I've worked for the OEMs. I worked for the in-house. I worked for the ISOs. And that's why I started my own company. I figured out a way to customize what the needs were out there and make it specific to each hospital. So every hospital that I work for, I don't have a certain budget. I ask them what budget they need to be at, and we get there. I like to start from a zero budget, taking, all right, here's what it's going to cost to run it, and then be accountable for every dollar spent. And if you can do that, and you know your process and the way things are supposed to be done, and you train your staff that way, you never have to worry about anybody telling you, you're spending way too much money. Everything is justified, because there's things called, if you get for example, lightning hits the hospital, things you can't control, an act of God. There's a variance there, right? So you write up a variance report based, all right, we went over budget by $50,000, but here's the reason why. And they know, they have insurance for that, most of them. Some of them don't, they have their own insurance. They do risk assessments, right? And they say, well, that's a chance we took, we'll eat that. But so they'll say, all right, that was the only time we had a glitch. The rest of the time you've been trending on budget or under budget, and we're happy. So, and if anyone ever challenges me and says, I don't believe you can do what you do, I show them all the numbers I have from all my accounts. I'm very transparent. I have no problem opening up my books and my work history to anybody. And this way, if they want to challenge me, data speaks for itself. I don't even have to say a word. So.
How many companies are out there like yours where you're going into these hospitals and making these presentations, and how it is that they can be saving money while being more efficient?
Well, all of them try to do that. All the even the OEMs go out there and try to do that, and they all sing the same tune in a different way. But I do it based on formulas that the hospitals set for themselves. Like most of them don't want to spend more than 10% of total capital equipment, and what that means is, let's say they have $100 million worth of devices in the hospital that they bought, and that's going to be a large hospital. So with that being said, their budget shouldn't be more than $10 million, and that's a good budget.
Annually?
Annually,
Okay.
correct. Yeah, 10% is. But what I do from there, I start fine-tuning the processes, and you can even tweak it down. Right now, with the hospital that I have, I'm not going to mention the name on it, but I'm running at about 4.8%, and that's very efficient. I was surprised myself, but we've had a real good year this year, and we even surpassed the budget that the hospital put on us. We came under that. And the bad news about that is now the hospital doesn't want to give you that same budget the following year. You have to justify why you're asking for X amount of dollars for the budget every year.
Did you ever see the movie Falling Down with Michael Douglas?
I don't think I did.
It's a very good movie. But at one point, they're talking about the contractor for the city, that if they use less money this year than next year, then their budget will be reduced. So they purposely find excuses to dig up roads that are good and fill potholes that don't exist, so that they will have the same budget next year.
Yeah, we don't do that. We try not to do that. What we do is educate our CFO and say, instead of based off of a 12-month budget, let's do it 18 months, because a lot of times when units fail, they fail on time waves. They might be good for 6 to 9 months, and then after the 9 months, you might get a few hiccups where you have a spike, and you've got to spend $50,000, $60,000. This is outside of the electrical strike we talked about. And so once the CFO understands the way the budget truly runs, and that's where relationship building comes in place too. They have a trust with you, and they know if you tell them this is the budget, they trust you. That's what the budget's going to be.
Now, James says it's kind of ridiculous that a bolt costs $50 for an IV pull because it's got to be certified. Can't go to Lowe's and get a 50-cent one. At least that is what a Biomed told me.
Okay. There's things, let's use extension cords, all right? In the hospitals, you can't just use any extension cord. They're called RFPs. They have to be attached to a medical device where you have to be able to take it off with a tool, and then you have to be medical grade. And pretty much what medical grade means that it's been certified, that you can use it up to 75% of its maximum output, whatever the amperage is that they have on it. So yes, I agree with you. It's frustrating that you can't go to Lowe's or Home Depot, but let's say we did go to Lowe's and Home Depot. Now you have a patient safety violation because that device was not certified. So we get the certified medical grade one. Yes, it costs more. So you can't have it both ways. You have to do it the right way.
Yes. What we got here? Let's see. I'm just reading through the questions that are popping up along with it.
Sure.
Yes.
These are all good questions, though, and then I'm not offended by any of them. I'm just trying to educate you on what it is we do and how we do it.
Where do most technicians go? Like OEM, independent, or in-house for the manufacturer? Like where do most of the technicians that learn this kind of stuff go?
They usually go to hospitals. They usually go to hospitals first, all right? I know most of them from us, we place them mostly in hospitals. The second is probably the independent service organizations, and then the OEMs, all right? OEMs now are starting to look at schools like ours because, again, they're being hit just as bad as we are with the supply shortage, the supply and demand of, labor. So, but mostly now with our numbers, it's mostly hospitals, then independent service organizations, and then OEMs.
Do you think there was a greater level of appreciation for independent service centers when the hospitals were getting just overcrowded during COVID and hit really hard? Because the problem that we have in our industry is that the manufacturer does not have the capacity to keep up with all the requests for maintenance of their products.
I had some problems with COVID, and here was my problem. You had companies like Ford developing ventilators, right? Because we didn't have enough of them. There was a supply shortage. I disagree with that. I think the companies that were doing the ventilators should have been the only ones to do them. I didn't want to have that. But I guess when COVID came, it was better to have some medical device on this person than not having anything. But when COVID was over, they should have removed all that. So I think everybody, the ISOs and the OEMs and the in-house biomed, they all cared about what was the best thing to do. Nobody wanted to take advantage of anything. I would hope not. But everyone wanted to do the right thing during this crisis as far as the repair goes. And I think we worked better as a team during COVID with all three organizations versus the way it is now. Now it's like COVID's over and let's get back to the grindstone of being competitive again instead of working together as a team. As a school, I encourage the OEMs to work closely with the ISOs and say, we support the right to work as long as you get this training from us, and we'll make it at a reasonable price, not this outrageous price of $20,000 a week, which is unheard of.
What? Wait, say that again.
Some of the schools from the OEMs can go up as high as $20,000 a week, and that doesn't even include your travel and all that. And I know because I was trying to get some of my technicians to go to some of these schools.
That was a bachelor's degree when I was a teenager.
Exactly. That's almost our entire degree plan.
$20,000 for a week.
And that's on the high end. On the low end, you're looking at about $8,000 a week for training on one device.
And this is what you're trying to solve with the VR training.
Yes, that's what we're trying to do. And the other thing we're trying to do is develop relationships with the OEMs to work together with the ISOs and come up to mutual agreement on both sides, what makes sense, what's a fair profit for the OEM, a fair profit for the ISO, and not gouging the hospitals at the same time, which still gives the hospital a reasonable price. That's the goal of our school, speaking out to the public, to our industry. This is what we should do to work together collaboratively. And how we're going to do that, it's still being done in the works. No one has taken on that task except our organization right now, with CBET. We're trying to do that through the associations that we work with throughout the country and the independent service organizations.
What is something really great happening within the industry, but also something that needs to see a big change? What's a really good and a really bad?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, what I think is great happening in the industry is the sophistication of the medical devices. I'll give you an example. I had to have surgery this last year, and I was thankful for the Da Vinci OR robot. Because of that Da Vinci, instead of cutting you open to take out a gallbladder, they were able just to pierce you with 4 holes and then pull out the gallbladder, and they didn't even have to do stitches. They just put glue in it, and the next day I was up and moving around. Had I not had that Da Vinci, the healing time could be up to 1 month on that. So that's some of the great things on it. Now, some of the bad things on it, not everyone can work on a Da Vinci, right? With that, you need to be OEM certified and trained on. I would not, and that's another thing, a good ISO will not work on equipment that they're not really qualified to work on.
Yeah, that's one of the people, there was a troll in the stream earlier that was saying, you think this is all good, but why don't you work on any of this medical equipment? And I was saying, I don't want to work on an X-ray machine because I don't know how to work on an X-ray machine. Like I will work on the products that I know I can do a great job at, better than the manufacturer. I will not touch things where I don't know what I'm doing.
Right, and that's exactly right. And just for the people that were asking about life safety, just so you know, in my hospital, we do not work on anesthesia equipment. I give that to the OEM, and that's because that's my choice as a business owner. And the reason why I do that, it reduces my risk on liability insurance. It keeps the OEM happy. They work with us because we have it under service contract, and they allow us to do first call, and we don't do anything without their consent. So my company actually has a pretty good relationship with the OEMs. I don't have the same problem as a lot of other ISOs have with OEMs because it's all about effective communication and establishing relationships and an understanding that's mutually beneficial financially for both organizations.
I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much.
Is
there anything you think I missed? Anything you want to get across to the people that are watching this? Most of them are going to be audience of, component level board repair for laptop kind of channel.
Yeah, I would say one thing. For everyone that heard everything, of this debate with the right to repair, it's going to work out the way it's supposed to. It's going to be okay because we're going to make sure we communicate effectively. Don't be afraid to get into this industry. You'll be trained correctly. It's a fun industry. It's challenging. It's rewarding, and you'll make a good living at it.
And where do people find you again?
You can find us at cbet.edu, and you just go to the website. Any information you want, we're there.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Have a great day.
That's it for today, and as always, I hope you learned something. All right. See, I almost spilled a cup of water on my laptop. You see that? See, I'm a professional, though. I'm a professional. We don't play that water damage shit here. Anyway, see you in the next video. Bye now.